Salutations, Utopians. Hope all is well in your world. Everyone recovering from that wonderful 4th of July celebration. There was some big news today. Paul George finally really broke down the intimate details of his departure from the Los Angeles Clippers uh, and joining the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm glad I waited to bring forth this end all be all topic and video on the matter. First and foremost, I'll highlight what he said before we start this from the beginning. Paul George stated that originally the first offer from Lawrence Frank and Steve Ballmer was 2 years, $60 million, which would make it $30 million a year. He countered with, give me what Kawhi's getting, 3 years, 150, with a no trade clause. Clippers said no. His final offer was 4 years, 220 million, and Clippers said absolutely not, because you're definitely not going to get a deal longer than Kawhi. Now, I guess Paul George's camp used Kawhi as the there was a little bit of a miscommunication, a misunderstanding. First off, commend both sides. Paul was very professional throughout the whole year, because the way that discussion was going, you knew ahead of time, prior to even the trade deadline, that, okay, CBA is coming, shrinking cap, no more super teams. We got about 4 guys here who are legacy players. 2 of them have been MVPs. The other one has been a finals MVP. He's the only one who has no MVPs. And he wants to be eye to eye with Kawhi, who is originally the head boss on how in orchestrating this entire formation in Los Angeles. Kawhi, off that 2019 championship campaign with the Toronto Raptors, elected to exercise his free agent rights and go to the Los Angeles Clippers. But prior to signing with the Clippers, Kawhi leveraged the Los Angeles Lakers that summer and postured like he was going to be, at least postured, because we don't know how serious Kawhi was about joining the Lakers, but he postured like he was ready to be a 3-team with Anthony Davis and LeBron. And that obviously mortified the Los Angeles Clippers, who had a new owner and were trying to debut a new brand, who, mind you, the owner, Steve Ballmer, who has more money than 27 of the NBA owners combined, promised that he was not going to take the Los Angeles Clippers to Seattle. So he had to deliver on his promise. Well, who better candidate to go against LeBron, who was the newest thing, the newest, coolest thing since sliced bread in LA, in Tinseltown, Mr. Lifetime Nike deal. How do you compete with that? I got to go get this guy Kawhi, who battled him in the finals for many years. And with that, it required a level of accommodating that few teams have ever been able to rival, if ever in the history. They asked him who he wanted. He put his word of approval on Paul George. Now, before we get into that, Jimmy Butler was a free agent who's just as a dynamic and prolific defender as Kawhi. I think the only other player besides Kawhi who has more steals than fouls. And yet he chose to get Paul George, who is a California native. The California ties obviously was very important to Kawhi. And so Jerry West and the rest of the Brain Trust orchestrated exactly what he wanted, and that required the Los Angeles Clippers to forfeit 5 first-round picks, 2 on which have led to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams, who are both prolific and dynamic franchise guys. So much so, Shai Gilgeous was damn near the MVP last year, and is now due for a $400 million extension. And so let me make this very clear. The Clippers did exactly what they were supposed to do. the fate of the universe was on the line. They're trying to get a new stadium. They had to do what they had to do, and they got the free agent that they wanted. Paul George arrives, and immediately 2020 season, they were on track to win a championship. Everything to me was in model. Yes, the Lakers might have had the league best record, but that was a very old team, and they were running out of gas fast. Meanwhile, the Clippers were picking up players on the buyout market like Patrick Patterson, Joe English. They just had guys on that roster, and don't quote me on the exact timeline, but they had a player for every type of situation, just about. I think they landed one of the Morris twins even. Like, they were just really a well-rounded roster. Not to mention Montrezl Harrell was playing out of his mind. Like, he's the original Nas Reed. And then you had in terms of impact is concerned. And then Lou Will, the dynamic backcourt of Lou Will and Pat Bev was unbelievable. Reggie Jackson, I think, got there, was playing outstanding. Then COVID hit. And guys having to play in the bubble is why the Lakers can tell people you can't clown it and call it a Disney ring because the level of disconnect in that Clippers locker room once they got locked in and had to just focus on the bubble. And I think you could attribute a lot of that pandemic joking to what was stored in the back of the Clippers' mind. And so they ended up severely striking out that year. To the Clippers' credit, they did make it to a Western Conference Finals before, but the ultimate demise last year was, and the actions speak for itself, when they lost to the Dallas Mavericks, and this offseason they go sign Derrick Jones Jr., the guy guarding Paul George. They realized, that's why I tell people, it's not just how you lose, it's not just losing, it's how you lose. They took the soul out of the Clippers. They really truly realized we had hit our max ceiling. And you have to have lengthy athletic wings, the Trey Murphys, the Herb Jones, the PJ Washingtons. You got to have these 6'8", 6'9" athletic, lanky guys. And the Clippers realized we don't have enough athletes. James Harden looked old. Paul George looked old. Kawhi couldn't play. Russ was a step too slow for the first time. Because even Russ's, half step is still faster than most. Like LeBron is, first step is still as dynamic as any, but not to what they were in their prime. And so the Clippers said, that's it, we've reached our peak. This is what we're going to do. And I think a couple problems happened for Paul George. One, he doesn't understand. $50 million is reserved for LeBron, Steph Curry, Kawhi, guys who won championship. You have to be the upper echelon royalty of the league. You have to have won championships. Paul George's talent is of their magnitude, but he doesn't have the credentials to quite warrant that type of king's ransom. He could have pushed for, maybe lobbied for like $40 million, but to think you were eye to eye, especially knowing the pandemic performances, you don't really see that from Kawhi, the shrinking moments. Paul George has had quite a number of those. And so in order for him to get to that 50 million mark, or to get to his dollar requirement, he had to go to a desperate team like Philadelphia, who has over leveraged themselves time and time again. Same team that has paid Tobias Harris a king's ransom. Same team that had, one of the highest payroll every year. They're basically the NBA version of the Philadelphia Eagles. They every year put together a team, but even the Eagles have now recently won a championship. But still, they're known to dominate the headlines. Off season is bigger than their actual season, and so they may win the off season, but they don't win the regular season. So they told them, we think of you more in the James Harden, DeMar DeRozan caliber of player. And I told a lot of people, DeMar DeRozan is going to make it difficult for Paul George to get paid. And so Paul George, like the classy individual that he is, and I want to say this whole thing was very commendable how they all conducted themselves, because even Steve Ballmer came on the podcast, which is something to be commended, you know what I mean? And gave him an interview as one of his first guests. That's all love. They're just, we just disagree. There's something that should be said about that. I see people condemning the Clippers and you struck out and all this other nonsense. They did exactly what they were supposed to do, and they sold high. And I think it was so cool that that Steve Ballmer was on Paul George's podcast. It really makes you appreciate that even more. DeMar DeRozan, James Harden, that's his level, they felt. That's what they were willing to pay to see that team again. And since it didn't happen, since he thought he was worth more, okay, cool, send us James Harden. And he had to ultimately greenlight that. He could have pump faked and said, all right, we'll revisit this at the end of the year, and then, screwed the Clippers. He made sure to get that they actually had someone to pair with Kawhi. So kudos to him, respect to him. And then, let's talk a little bit now moving forward. What does the future hold? The Clippers, they got Chris Dunn. They've acquired Mo Bamba, who's starting to be a bit like Ben Simmons, where you're like, whoa, this guy could really be a game changer. 30 plus percentile free throw shooter, 3-point shooter, rim protector, 8-foot wingspan, north of 8-foot wingspan. Still very athletic. So we're all waiting. And then Kai Jones is re-signed. I'm trying to think. There's one more key signing they've made, Derek Jones, that I've already alluded to. So they've done quite a bit. Remember, Norm Powell's still there, also, and so Bones Highlands, Terrence Mann. These guys are all there. They got a young athletic group. Their big two is going to be Kawhi and James, and then the Mavericks' big two is Kyrie and Luka. And if Kawhi is healthy, he can guard Luka, and if James is healthy, he can do enough. They can put Man or one of those guys, Bones, on Kawhi. He doesn't have to guard, but James can guard like a PJ Washington and hide him, and it's then from there it's up, But you're not being bullied into giving a contract extension to a Tobias Harris. You're not being bullied into a contract extension for some of those other names perhaps that was on the board. They're going to have to double down and invest in Zubac. Kudos to that. That's fine. I think Zubac is ready to take it to the next level. The league is going back towards big men anyway. Zubac has plenty of experience now. He's done enough in the league to warrant the increase in workload, and so good for him. Looking at the Philadelphia 76ers, obviously is championship or bust. Paul George is brought there to win a chip. He's 35. Joel Embiid is 30, I think, but his physically is a 35-year-old, so time is not really on their side. Tyrese Maxey is emerging as one of the more promising young stars. They did a great job in the draft getting a player from Duke and McCain, who had a very promising summer league this evening. I'm not quite much of a fan of him as a point guard, but as a off guard who can spot up and shoot, he's a Kyle Korver type. Really, the great thing about him is his mechanics are the same every time he releases and fires. So he's going to definitely be a pro in this league. I like their other guy also, Adam Bona. He's looking very promising. They signed Andre Drummond, but what I'll tell you right now, they still got KJ Martin, who I'm a big fan of, Kenyon Martin's son. I just don't know if it's enough opportunity to be had in Philadelphia, but he's a very skilled player. I was sad to see that he got traded from the Clippers. I think he still has plenty of promising potential, a world of potential, feisty, strong, big, small forward, hybrid player in today's league, extremely explosive, box office explosive. But the Clippers are playing that name game, and they want to go get Dorian Finney-Smith, from my understanding. So that's going to be interesting, how that plays off. They have to still round out their roster. I'm going to be quite honest with you. I'm not sold on Philadelphia. Everything looks cohesive, but ultimately, at the end of the day, just something doesn't sit right. This is still the same team that had Ben Simmons, Tobias, Joel Embiid, mind you, let me tell you, I know everyone likes to laugh at Tobias, but Tobias is going to have a decent season with Cade Cunningham in Detroit, especially now he's playing with different kind of big men, different type of athletes around that team. But back to the point regarding, as I digress towards Philadelphia, they had Jimmy Butler, Ben Simmons, Josh Richardson, Tobias, and on paper everything checked out. Still couldn't get the job done. They're gonna regret losing Paul Reed. I don't know why they just gave him away like that, but Paul Reed, I don't care what anyone says. There was times where he looked like you could build around him and forget about Joel. That's how good he looked. And shooting mid-30s like a Daniel Theis, 6'8", but doesn't play like he's 6'8". It's a mentality thing. He plays like a center, willing to scrap, rim protects, mid-30% three-point shooter, physical, can set the tone, high energy. These are the kind of guys you want, and they're not commanding a lot of money. I don't know why they would do that. I don't know what they were thinking. Even if they think Bona's going to be solid, Bona doesn't have range like that. And he still needs time. There's nothing wrong with resting a player and letting them groom and get on a two-way contract while you do that. And Drummond is not, he doesn't do anything besides rim protect and dunk. So I don't really understand that. You know what I mean? He's not the most nimble guy in pick and roll. I'm a big fan of Drummond, but I just don't understand the swapping. You know, I would have kept Paul Reed and Drummond. They're going to regret that decision. Mark my words. But, everything looks good on paper. They got the career, they got the car, they got the partner, they got the everything, but they've never swam. That's the problem I look at with Philly. They don't know how to swim. That team's character. And as much as Tyrese Maxey's a good player, he's not a freak. He's not a freak of, he's not an animal out there. You know what I mean? Zion, Ja, LeBron. He's not that guy that's going to get to wherever he wants whenever. He's a good player. He's still a human though. He's not that freak of nature. You know what I mean? Where it's like, you can't guard me. You can't stay in front of me. He's not unguardable. He can still be contained. And so I just don't know if Philly did enough still. You know what I mean? When you look at New York, when you look at Boston, Boston is too savvy. Jrue Holiday's going to cancel out Tyrese. And then Brown and Tatum, they're going to devour Paul George on the perimeter and whoever else they think they're going to put on the wing next to him. Kawhi and Paul can defeat the Celtics. Whatever they're going to put in Philadelphia cannot. Now Joel Embiid, he's got the advantage against Boston, but they can put KP on the blind side, and you don't have a Tobias right now on the roster who can knock down mid ranges. You didn't sign back Saric. You didn't go after a Saric, a stretch. They don't got no stretch four on the team. That's what I'm saying. Why let go of Paul Reed? It doesn't make sense. I don't know what they were thinking, and I don't know why he's still a free agent. Maybe they bring him back on a lesser deal. I don't know. But that was a big mistake, and I'm just not sold on Philly. They're not going to beat the Knicks. They're not going to beat the Celtics. They'll get past Indiana. Milwaukee, I don't know. Depends. Is Brook Lopez getting re-signed? Even if not, you put Giannis at the 5. You still got Middleton and Dame. I don't know. That's a better big three than Philly. It's just something about it. It's like it looks good on the surface, but it isn't. I don't know. So at the end of the day, I'm still, the Clippers have nothing to hang their hat on. They did what they were supposed to do. They fought. It didn't work out. But this isn't nothing to question in hindsight, armchair quarterback, and try to critique about. Well done. Venture fell just short of a championship, but it still was well worth it. And all parties won at the end of the day. Are they Lob City? No. Are they the B. Diddy, Elton Brand era? Chris Kaman? Maybe not. But you know what? They went as far as any Clipper team has ever went, and that holds weight. And that's what all you can ask for. It's hard to win in this league. It costs more than ever. A casino group had to go in and buy the Mavericks share, buy a good portion, 73% of Mark Cuban's stake in the Dallas Mavericks, and then immediately go out and get P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford. They threw a monkey wrench in the system when they did that. You know what I mean? Otherwise, the Clippers would have beat that team. You know what I mean? But there wasn't enough time to react when you're the Clippers against that, and then Kawhi being injured. So you know what? It was the end of an era, but well done to both sides. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. We can look back in hindsight and criticize all we want, but they did exactly what they were supposed to do. Because if Kawhi would have went to the Lakers, guess what? It would have really been over with for the Clippers. They would have just been sitting insolvent for nothing. And Shea Gilgeous, nobody would have ever guessed he would have been this level of monstrosity. So you know what? Don't be surprised. The Clippers are going to be a fun, scrappy, up-tempo ball club, and they'll actually be better than they were last year. You can book it. All right, Utopians, I'll try to do better next time. Global, out.